Hi everyone, today I've got a really fun alternative for a DIY envelope for you. If you've ever made a 3D project, I'm going to be focusing on this three-dimensional tag today, and you'd like to send it, then this is the perfect way of constructing an envelope that it can go in, but it also has a pop-up feature as well, so it's so much fun. Here's an example of one I've previously made on a live stream. You can go back and watch the live stream. That is on CraftStash Facebook page. I'll make sure I link that. But when you open up the box, the card, the project pops up from inside. So we don't have to do this pop-up box, which can also lift out. You can do any card or project inside of here you want to. So I'm going to be showing you all the measurements for the box and the wrap, and of course the mechanism as well. So just taking another look at how this works, the back panel is completely static to the box. It's the front panel that pulls forward, and this ribbon pulls up the project that's inside. So there's a pop-up box that I did, and as I say, your project, whatever it may be, can then be lifted out, so it's perfect as a box envelope for a card. But then when you pop the card or the project back inside and push it down, that brings this flap all the way back up, and you can close it again nice and neat. Something else to note is that I have added chipboard to lots of the panels. This is just to strengthen everything so it's really sturdy. You don't have to add chipboard, but I would definitely recommend it. So the first thing you want to do is take your 3D card, your project, whatever it is that you'd like to put into a box or an envelope, and determine the size of it. So I've measured this one, and I've written the measurements down here for you so you can see them throughout the entire tutorial. And then I've written the stages we're going to do, and this is then adaptable. So whatever your depth, width and height of your project is, and bear in mind I did add sort of about 5 or so millimeters to each one to make them slightly larger to give this room to move around. Whatever these are written within these formulas, so you should be able to hopefully follow along and work out your own measurements. So the first thing we're going to do is create the box. Now if we take a look at our finished piece, and obviously this would be decorated much differently, the box that we're going to be making here, if I remove our card, our project, it's this burgundy maroon coloured piece here that we're going to be making. It's extremely simple. This is probably the easiest part of the entire project. Now I've chosen to go with a gold mirror card for this part. You're going to need 2 of each panel. Now along my measurements, you'll notice that some of the tabs are written in blue. These are fold over, or they're tabs that are going to be glued. They don't have to be 2 centimeters. You can do them 1.5, you can do them 2.5. That is and where an alternative measurement can be used if you prefer. I've used 2 centimeters for all of my tabs. Now these are ones that fold over when we are covering the chipboard. It's also tabs like this for when we are joining 2 pieces. So I've done them all at 2 centimeters, but I've marked these ones in blue in case maybe you're cutting a piece of cardstock and you only have 1.5 centimeters left, for example. You can still make that work. So for the box, we're going to need 2 panels. Now each panel has a width that is going to be made up of the following dimensions, and you're going to want to score between each section. So you want to have, first of all, a 2 centimeter tab. Then you want to have your depth, and if I turn this over, you should be able to see those score lines. So 2 centimeters, the depth, and then the width. So I've got the 2 centimeter tab, then the depth also happens to be 2 centimeters, and then the width is 12 centimeters. So that's the width of this panel. Then the length needs to be the height of your project, which in this case is 17 centimeters, and then the depth, which is another 2 centimeters. So you want to score those lines and cut that out, and you want to do that twice. And then the bottom corner between these score lines, you want to cut that away and then cut just a tab into this section. As I say, you're going to want to do 2 of these. Now I've applied glue along the edge of each one here because these are going to join together like so and wrap round, and I couldn't fit them onto one A4 sheet. But what I've also got here is a tab, and this depends on the ribbon that you want to use. And now's the time to choose your ribbon. I've gone for a grosgrain ribbon that's quite strong, it's quite sturdy, it's not going anywhere, and it's quite wide. So a wider ribbon is easier. You don't want anything that's going to create too much friction on your cardstock either. So just measure the width of your ribbon here. So it's about 1.5 centimeters. So I'm going to create my slot in both of my panels at 2 centimeters wide. Now this is where you need to take your project and decide how far up do you want your project to pop up out of your envelope box. So lay it in on the panel, back panel, and you should notice that this should be the correct height for your project, and with this lifted up, because this will wrap around, the correct width as well. Okay, so that should sit nicely on that panel. When your pop-up works, how high do you want this to lift up? Now I decided I wanted mine to come up quite a way. So around about, I think that was 11 centimeters. So yeah, I did 11. I mean, you can do it much smaller, but what I wanted to do is have just the dragonfly wings kind of revealed. So if I place this over the top, which it will be, you'll just see the dragonfly wings peeking out, and then the project can be lifted out. So I've made a mark at 11 centimeters from the base, and then found the center of this panel here and made a slot for my ribbon. So I've already cut this one out. Hopefully you can just see that that's been cut out, and I'm going to do the same now with this one. And I did it with a craft knife and a ruler because I just find this the easiest way. If you happen to have a small die that will cut you something similar, then that would be ideal, but not many people would have that. So just a craft knife here. You don't need it to be very wide unless you've got a particularly thick ribbon. So that's around 2 to 3 millimeters wide, that slot. So both of these should be in exactly the same place. And if you place these together, you should be able to see that they are so. Okay, so now we can construct our wrap. You can go with a wet glue if you prefer, but I am going on to mirror cards. So I've decided to go with the red liner tape because I know that's going to hold a little bit stronger. So I'm going to place each one up next to each other, making sure the top is nice and level. And I'm going to fold the tab over, fold this in half, and create the box like so. Okay, nice and easy. For the base, I'm just going to tuck in those tabs that we cut, fold the bottom one in, and then the one with the tape on, and you can do this last, you don't have to have done this in advance the same way I did. Just remove the backing and glue that together. Just folding that, securing that box. There we go. Now just double check at this stage that your project is going to fully sit inside your box like so. You've got some wiggle room, not too much, but you've got some. Now this being the project that it is, I've got a lot of space around mine. If this is a card, I'd probably make it a little bit tighter. Now I'm going to pop this to the side, and I'm going to start creating the wrap that's going to go around this. Now for the wrap, as I said at the beginning, I am using chipboard. The chipboard is completely optional. You could work this out without chipboard, just using maybe a couple of layers of cardstock instead. The chipboard I'm using is from the back of a paper pad. So I often cut these pieces up and use them, but if you've got something like a cereal box, that would work equally as well. So for the front of the chipboard piece, which if I show you on this, is actually going to be the top here and along here as well. Now I've done a different version to this. Rather than having this top flap on the reverse panel, I've actually bought that and added it onto the front panel. Okay, so my front panel is going to have the length, the depth, and then an additional 2 centimeter tab here, and we won't have this bit on the reverse. So as I've said here, chipboard. The first piece you're going to want is the height and the width of your project. So this is then going to cover there. We're going to wrap this so any excess around the edge will all be covered. We then need a piece that is the width and the depth of your project, and this is going to be the top piece, and that will go there. And then we need the width again and 2 centimeters deep. This can be changed if you want to have a longer flap on the back. And as I just said, this piece is then going to fold over to the reverse of the project. So the three will lay together like so, and I would suggest leaving a few millimeters gap between them. We also need a chipboard piece cut for the reverse. This is simply going to be one panel, the same as the front, that's going to be the height and the width of your project. Pop that to the side for now. Now we need to create the wrap around these, and that's going to be the fabric paper. Now I'm using fabric paper, but you don't have to. You can use ordinary paper. I absolutely love this from Creative Craft Products. This is a fabric feel. It can be washed, it can be scrunched, it can be inked, it can be die cut, but it has that soft fabric feel and it bends and is more flexible than normal paper. This means that where I'm creasing it and folding it, I'm not going to get any cracking or tearing. So we're going to want to cut two pieces for the front panel. And these are going to be, first of all, the width of the entire panel is going to be your 2 centimetre tab. It's also going to be the width of your project and then another 2 centimetre tab. The height gets a little more complicated, but we're going to start from the bottom. So we've got the depth of your project, in this case again 2 centimetres. We've got a tiny little tab. Now this is optional, but I find this works better with the chipboard. I haven't written it on here because you don't have to do it. But I've left a few millimeters gap here, and then I've done an additional score line. Okay, so this gives us flexibility around the corner. So a few millimeters there. Then we have the height of our project, a few millimeters again. The depth of our project, a few millimeters again. And then we have that bottom flap piece, which was 2 centimeters. And then we've got an additional 2 centimetre fold over. Now again, anything in blue is going to be folded over and glued. So if those measurements vary slightly, it does not matter. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do now is cut away corners. So I'm going to be cutting away this corner here. And I'm going to leave where I did a little few millimetres excess, I'm going to leave them, and I'll fold those in as we go through the project. So take your bottom 2 corners away. This is the first bit, the depth. Then we went into the height of the project. Then I'm just going to snip along each of these lines, and if you didn't leave the few millimeters excess, then you won't need to worry about as many of these. And then I'm going to take away this corner here. Then the same here. And then cut all the way down this side too, up to that first score line, just inside. And there. And I've got one there too. Now taking your chipboard will glue into this. Okay, so this is actually the inside of the front panel. And if we just bend those, hopefully you can see how that is going to fold over your project. Once it all gets put together, it will be much easier for you to see. So applying wet glue, my favourite at the moment to use is the acrylic glue by Creative Expressions. This is brilliant, but unfortunately the company, I don't believe, are going to be making it much longer or producing it much longer. So if you see it, I would definitely stock up while you can. So as you can see, my chipboard first panel has fit on there, and then the next panel, this is the one, I've actually muddled these up. This is the flap. What I call the flap is the bit that folds over and onto the back, and this one can vary in size if you wish, once you get a bit more confident with creating this 3D envelope box. And then this one is the top. So this is just strengthening this wrap that's going to go around. Okay, so now I can fold all of these pieces in and over, just like so. So again, just using my glue, I'm just going to run them along all the edges. Don't do too many at once because the glue can take a few minutes to take hold, and you want to ideally hold it or put something strong on top so it can be held in place while it dries. It doesn't take long. Just do not forget that the bottom piece, which is it's the depth, so it should be on mine 2 centimeters. Do not fold this over and glue this. This is actually going to stick to the bottom of your box like so. So your wrap, the front of your wrap should now fold over your box. Okay, now we do also have the panel that is going to cover this. This is measured just here, inside front wrap it's called. This is the length of it is going to be the height plus the depth plus 2 centimeters. And again, whether you want to put those score lines in or not, you can. I tend to just glue this down and then use the bone folder to press into the grooves. But I'm going to do this in a little while. There's a reason for this. So I want to get the other back piece covered, and then we'll construct the mechanism, and this will go on at that stage. So we'll come back to that. So now to cover your other back chipboard piece. So this one is also going to be the width is going to be 2 centimeter tab, the width of your project, and then your 2 centimeter tab again. The height or the length of it is going to be the depth of your project. I've left a 2mm gap there or so double scored that. Then the height, and then a 2 centimeter fold over. And just as we did before, so we can cut away these squares, and then again we can glue this with your favourite wet glue. Like I say, you can use tape for this if you prefer, but I find that with a tape, once the project gets a little warm or a little cold, the tape can lose its stickiness over time. Now again, we are not gluing this bottom panel. This is the depth one. We are not gluing this. We are simply gluing the top and the side tabs that are marked in blue. Now, as I'm gluing these down, we don't need to cover the inside of this one in the same way as we just got ready the cover for the inside of the front panel. This is because this is going to be glued to your box, in my case the gold mirror card box, so we don't need to worry about this at all. We are just making sure this is nice and neat by wrapping over the chipboard there. So as I say, the bottom piece will fit on the bottom of your box, and the back panel will come up and cover the back of your box. And then, although we've not finished it, that bottom piece of the front will sit on the other side. It will fold over and sit on the back, and this will be the front of your box. So everything should be lining up nicely now. Okay, so the next part that we want to do is, first of all, this is optional and it depends on the strength of the cardstock you've used for your box, but what I like to do is add an additional piece of chipboard, the width of my box and the height up to the slot that you've cut. Cover it with the same cardstock. You could use a different cardstock for decoration, but I've covered it just with the same gold mirror card there, and glue it directly underneath the slot there. This is going to add a much sturdier base because your ribbon is going to pull on the bottom here, and you don't want this to tear. I have had that happen with the previous mechanism when I was dealing with the prototypes, so you don't want to do that. Now I'm just going to take a look and decide which is the front or back. It doesn't really matter. Just check the width and height there, and I'm going to glue this on. Again, tape or glue, it's entirely up to you depending on the materials you're using. Because I've got a lot of chipboard there, I can get away with using glue rather than red line tape. And I'm just going to make sure that sits directly underneath that slot and really strengthens that front panel. You're going to want to give that a few minutes to dry before you move on to the next stage. While that's drying, what we can do is we can cut a slot the same as this into this is the inside front wrap piece. This is the piece we haven't glued on to the inside of the front wrap. So that slot needs to be in the same position. Now, if you remember, I did this 11 centimeters from the base, so I'm going to do the same here. So measure 11 centimeters, make a mark. Now you won't see that pencil mark, I've done it very lightly, but I'm also going to take the center just here, which is 6. I'm going to mark myself a little slot and cut this out as well in the same way as I did on the gold mirror card. Now I'm just laying that over the top of here where that's going to be. Just lay that there, and then I'm going to mark through that slot here, because now what we're going to do is cut a long piece of ribbon off, much longer than you think you'll need, and we are going to adhere this along the length here. Now this needs to be really secure, so a red line tape would be perfect, but what I'd like to do is a red line tape, but also then some wet glue as well on the top of it, and that should hopefully secure it in really well. So really burnish down the red line tape, lift up the backing, place your ribbon on top up to the slot there, and then I'm going to feed this ribbon through the slot. Feed that through quite a long way. Leave that loose at the moment, and now I'm going to add glue to the top of the ribbon and all the rest of this panel. So I'm going to do each of the chipboard panels glued individually. So there'll be quite a lot of glue here. This really needs to hold still, and don't forget to make sure you get just underneath. Don't get any glue on the ribbon if you can help it, the piece that's going to be coming out. And then each of these also needs to be glued and in here, because we're going to burnish into these grooves too. And then pull through the ribbon tight as you lay that panel down. That should fit nicely on there. Before you start pushing anything down too much, just burnish into these lines, because that will stretch your cardstock slightly, and burnish into this one so you've got those creases made. Make sure they're nice and strong, and then once they are in there, you can start to fold and really secure down all the rest of the panel. Burnishing helps a lot. It helps to spread the glue underneath and really press the cardstock into it. So now that cover is done, let's take our box, and don't forget the piece with the chipboard is going to be the front and go on here. I'm going to feed my ribbon through both of the slots. Okay, so you might want to do it separately, depends how easily it goes through. But either way, you want it to come from one to the other, and that will lay on there, leaving the back loose just for the moment, and we will secure that back in a moment. We're now going to place this back panel onto the base of our box. The reason I'm doing this one first, I'm not gluing this, just the bottom panel at the moment, is because when I want to look at the front of the box, I want this join to not be sitting at the front. I want it to be sitting towards the back, so it's nice and neat from the front. So I'm going to glue this one first and then the front one second, and that can overlap. I hope that makes sense. Hopefully you can see that onto the bottom there. Now we can glue the front panel over here too. Again, lots of glue, and secure that over the top. Now we've come a little bit further out because we added the chipboard inside, but that's all fine, nice and neat. Pop that down, make sure it looks nice and neat from the front and that everything is lining up nicely. Okay, so we have at the moment a piece that opens like so. Now what you want to do is have this sat at a right angle, so I've got this sat down exactly as it would be if it was open. I'm going to pull this ribbon fairly taut, okay, reasonably taut, not too much. I'm going to mark it just where it falls here. Okay, so that's just coming out of the slot there. I've put a line, and I'm going to cut myself a few inches beyond this line, like so. Now I'm going to measure 11 centimeters from the base, because we know that's the height of the slot. So around about there. That was the height from the bottom of the box to the slot, and the same on this side, so 11 centimeters here. And I'm going to just measure this roughly, so I've got around about 8 centimeters, so I need about 8 centimeters of adhesive just here, making sure that's lined up, and about that much. This is all going to be hidden burnish this down. And peel off that backing. So again, red line tape for the ribbon on one side, which will hold it instantly for us so we can continue with the project. But then I'm going to apply wet glue on the other side. So what I now need to do is lift this up, apply from the line that I've drawn on my ribbon, match this to the line on the back panel here. So round about there. Okay. Some glue on top of the ribbon, some glue all around the ribbon. We're now going to close up this back panel. Gently pull the front forward, pull it through. There we go. And close that up at the back. While this is drying, I want to keep it as still as possible. So I'm just going to push down the ribbon inside, and that will close this up. And I can work on the decoration on the front whilst all the glue is drying in there. So the back panel's drying and anything else that's not yet dried. So I'm going to take the same ribbon as I've used on the inside, and I'm going to wrap this around the outside of the box. So this is what's going to secure it at the back. So it's going to be like a bow. So pull this through. So I've got a good 6 inches or more at the back. And where they meet, the same on both sides. So I'll trim this. And then I'm going to apply red line tape, and I'm going to do it across the front. It's down the centre. Of course, you can measure if you wish. All the way down the front, over the base, and then all the way up to the top, the red line tape, and stick my ribbon on. So don't forget to leave that excess at one end. So that then allows for your box to be tied up at the back just here like so, and keeps everything together as well. Now on the reverse of my box, I'm going to place this note card. This is from an old Stamperia paper pack, which I've also got some pattern paper from too. And I'm going to be decorating the outside of the box with these because I think it will work really well with the project. So as you push your project in, that should then push on the loop of ribbon in the center of the box there, and that will then lift up this front panel to close it, so it's all tucked in there. So how cool is that as a gift box and envelope that's a little bit different, and when it's opened, the project comes popping up and you can take it out. I think that is just so much fun. As I say, I've got the same here, the same mechanism, but I did this one with a pop-up card so that it's a pop-up within a pop-up. But of course, you don't have to do that. You can do absolutely any card or project you desire. You don't have to do the chipboard either if you don't want to, but really good fun either way. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget, of course, any questions on the measurements, the dimensions, the construction, how you put everything together, that can all be found by commenting on this video. And if you like this, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done before. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.